The drinker fixes Supergirl, how not to tank your movie. There's a couple of issues with this title already. How are you fixing a movie you haven't seen yet? How are you showing them how not to tank a movie when the movie hasn't been released? This is a video you might release after the movie comes out, so that way you can say, this is what I would have done to make the movie better. But here we are, poisoning the well, as they always do, astroturfing the fuck out of something, trying to create a negative aura around a movie that they haven't even seen yet. It's absolutely pathetic. So, we're going to watch The Drinker Fixes Supergirl. I don't know why there's 3 dots there. I don't know, 3 periods in that title. The Drinker ... The Drinker Fixes ... Supergirl. How not to tank your movie. Here we go.
You know, all these controversies and bad press swirling around James Gunn's Supergirl not by James Gunn got me thinking to myself, surely there must have been a better way to do this.
All these controversies. You mean she made a statement about, Millie made a statement about her time on House of the Dragon, because you guys kept reading the interview where they didn't specify what she was talking about. She was talking about House of the Dragon, and they were asking her how that is preparing her for Supergirl. You kept leaving that out. So that's not a controversy around Supergirl. That's around a completely different show that she was on back in season 1. So I don't know how that's controversial at this point, because she's not even starring in it anymore. The controversy is that you guys won't stop talking about her. That's the controversy. Not what she said, because everything she said was true. She was talking about her own life experience, and she was giving you guys information on how women are treated, and then you went and just did what she said men do. So I don't really understand how that's controversial, but I guess you have a story to tell and a narrative to spin, so here we are.
Surely the mega minds at DC could have found a way to introduce this movie to the public in a way that would win people over and get them excited instead of turning them away. And so I asked myself, what could I have done differently if I was in charge? Could the drinker, in fact, have fixed Supergirl? I mean, I know this series is more about rewriting.
I don't know how you could even fix anything. Your fucking movie is trash. Like, the movie that was made about your book is absolute garbage, and you were on set while that movie was being made. It was absolute shit. And you've gone through and you've made video after video trying to explain away why it's bad, and how people like the actors, especially the woman that was acting in it, made it awful. And you've tried everything you can to do like damage control over that movie. And now you're telling me that you can tell us, the general public, this is how I could fix this movie. You haven't seen the movie, and you can't even make a good movie based on your own property. So already we're in like really bad waters. Get the lifeboats ready.
Existing movies than managing PR campaigns, but hey, I can be flexible. And really, it touches on the same issues that a lot of movies experience these days, so why not use it as a learning experience for all of us? Ready? Too bad, I'm going in anyway. Now, the first and most important thing they should have done with this movie was to understand their market. And
the movie's not out yet. The first thing they should have done with their movie, the one that we haven't seen, understand their market, the movie we haven't seen. I just want to put that out there.
Not just what it wants, but how big it even is anymore. And this is where I have to deliver some unpleasant truths, dear viewer. They're not going to taste very good, but just like Tatiana, you will swallow them. And in the end, you'll thank me. I mean, she never has, though. Truth number 1 is that superhero movies in general just aren't very popular anymore. I've already talked about superhero fatigue, oversaturation of the market, and the general decline of audience interest.
Okay, I want to point out, I've done this in other videos. You can check my receipts on this if you have to. The movie industry is in fatigue right now. The industry as a whole. It's not just one specific genre. Movies as a whole are seeing less interest on average, typically, than what they've seen in previous years. There are always going to be outliers in movies that perform better than other films. That's always going to happen. Some of them are even going to make billions of dollars. And yes, those films do exist. However, it's not just superhero movies that are suffering. So the term superhero fatigue does not apply. It's an industry-wide problem that's affecting a range of films. That's the first thing. Secondly, if superhero movies are already suffering and they're already underperforming, then why are you still trying to fix a problem that you actually can't fix? You know what I'm saying? Like, why are you actively trying to fix something that you are admitting is in fatigue by critiquing the way they're advertising something to an audience that's already tuned out? That doesn't make any sense. It means the movie was going to suffer anyway. I'll make it really simple for you. If the movie's already going to underperform, then there's nothing in the PR campaign that they could have done to fix the systemic issue of superhero fatigue. You don't fix problems like that. That takes years to fix. And it takes a huge, massive amount of work from everyone to change how a systemic issue exists in society. If superhero fatigue is actually real, Supergirl is not going to fix it by herself.
Nauseum in other videos, so I'm not going to bore you with the whole argument again here. Instead, I'll just point to the MCU's box office returns as an example. In the 7 years from 2012 until 2019, the MCU had a total of 9 movies that grossed over $1 billion each. In the 7 years since then, you know how many they've managed? 2. And both of those films relied heavily on nostalgia to get arses in seats. Now,
by the way, they love to ignore this because they just do. COVID actually rewrote how people engage in movies. It also affected how movies were released. It affected the way studios did movies, right? So all of these things are factors. These are all issues that we tend to overlook, that between like 2020 and 2023, the industry went through some massive issues, and it did affect all the big franchises. I would go out on a limb saying, and I don't have proof of this because I always tell you guys if I'm speculating or if I'm throwing a theory out, I think the Marvel movies that underperformed in Phase 4 probably would have done better if COVID had not shut down movie theaters. I'm not saying all of them would have been massive hits, but I think they would have done a lot better. I think they would have performed better if movie theaters were just sailing along without any trouble whatsoever. So I think that's a factor we have to consider. It's something that I think as a theory is a very plausible theory, because we know for certain that when Scarlett went to court over Black Widow and the way Black Widow was released, one of the things they talked about is how the movie would have performed if it were not released in a different way. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that COVID changed the way those movies were being released at that time. So there is other factors to it. I'm not going to say that explains all of them. I'm also not going to say that explains away movies that just generally don't perform as well as other films, because that just happens. But there is definitely there was a factor of COVID affecting how the movie industry and how Hollywood was putting out films.
That's bad enough, but shall I hit you with another harsh truth? Well, I don't care if you're ready, I'm doing it anyway.
Well, Orca, if superhero fatigue is real, then how could he argue that movies still made $1 billion after superhero fatigue happened? You know what I mean? Because superhero fatigue would be a systemic issue that affects all superhero movies. And the reason why I would say it is a Hollywood issue, it's a industry-wide issue, is that you're always going to have outliers, right? You're always going to have those outliers. There are movies that are just going to perform well no matter what. But if superhero fatigue is the argument you're making, then that means superhero movies as a type of film, right, are suffering more, and therefore it's harder for them to make that level of money. But he showed that there are movies that have made tons of money as superhero films. He just showed that on screen, meaning that maybe it's an industry issue and not just confined to superheroes. Maybe that's what's going on. But that would require him to be honest.
Female-led superhero movies don't tend to make money.
Okay, so female-led superheroes don't tend to make money. Let's unpack this for a second. So you're saying that if a woman is the lead of a film, it's not going to make money anyway because they just don't make money. So stop the video here. Stop the video. Why are you bothering to quote unquote fix a film that has a woman as a lead character if you're expressing that female superheroes or women in superhero movies don't make money? What's the point? Pack it up. Go home. Take your ball. Like, what are we talking about? Why even make this video if that's the case? Oh, it's because you're just kind of talking shit. I get it. But on the side of that, maybe the reason women in films as lead characters don't make as much money has something to do with some of the things that women have been saying in the industry about how men react to women in film. Maybe some of the stuff that Millie Alcock was saying in her little interview that you guys were talking about, maybe he should apply some of that to his thought process here. I would disagree that having a woman as a lead character in a movie is de facto the movie isn't going to make any money, it's not going to perform well. I would just disagree with that fundamentally, because if you go outside of the realm of superhero films in general, which is what he's trying to do here, women do well in other genres that are considered male or men genres. So it's just a dumb argument on its face. But even if you take it at his, like, you're taking what he's saying at face value, you're going, okay, I believe him. Then why try to bother fixing Supergirl? And this would also prove that what Millie was saying in the interview was real and that women are held to a different standard than men. That would prove it, because he's saying the movies underperform because women are in them. So already, like, you make it too easy, bro. You make it too easy. This is why when you go girl bad, so movie bad, like, what argument is that? How is that constructive? Is this him suggesting that women shouldn't be allowed as lead roles in movies anymore because they don't make a ton of money? Is that what he's saying here? Like, low key, that's what he's saying. Like, why even bother? So my point is, like, he just doesn't make a lot of sense in this moment. It just doesn't. Since he's already established that women in superhero movies don't make money, I cannot wait to hear how he's going to tell us, from his perspective, how to turn this around.
Hey, don't hate me for telling inconvenient truths. And don't just take my word for it either. The numbers speak for themselves. In the past decade, there's been 9 major female-led superhero movies in theaters. And of those 9, only 3 have actually managed to turn a profit. Captain Marvel, Wakanda Forever, and Wonder Woman.
All right, hold on one second. I'm going to do a little fact check. So I want to point out half of those movies, according to what I can see, came out during either full-on COVID restrictions or partial COVID restrictions. So that would definitely affect those movies. All right, so if we're looking at the block of COVID specifically, right? You're checking that block. We got Black Widow, Shang-Chi, and Eternals. Those were 3 movies that came out during, like, the biggest amount of lockdowns on movie theaters. They all performed poorly in terms of the box office. All of them. Not just Black Widow, but all of them. The first movie to really break out from that was Spider-Man No Way Home. That was the first one. And we're talking about Spider-Man, the largest superhero in the world, the biggest one. The closest thing to Spider-Man is Batman, and that's not even that close. Spider-Man's the biggest one. So we're just going to put that out there. But what are the excuses for Shang-Chi and Eternals then? Right? What are the excuses for those? That's just one example of how these kinds of lists don't make sense. He's just creating a narrative. That's all he's doing. He's going, oh, look, all these movies, they didn't do well, and I'm going to ignore when they were released, what were they up against in the box office, was there any other factors surrounding the movie not performing well, and also ignore all the men-led films that have underperformed in the superhero genre. Should we look at the list of how many movies that had men in it as the lead, and then see how many of those underperformed? That would be a really interesting conversation. And if he were actually doing his due diligence in this video, he would include those numbers so you could compare them and go, yeah, I guess it makes sense. Men movies do better. So why don't we just, like, take that into account? Like, matter of fact, a lot of these movies, especially at the top of the list, did well. We're looking at 3 of the 9 movies that one of them crossed $1 billion and 2 of them got close to $1 billion. It's just, I don't know what the point is of this list. Like, what is the point of this? All right, let's continue. I got to unmute him, unfortunately.
Women. That means only 1 in 3 female-led superhero movies from the past decade have actually succeeded.
Now do it with guys. Do it with men. Do the math with men and see what that is. Are you going to do that? Are you going to try and compare it to men? Are you going to compare it to ensemble movies? Are you going to give us some sort of a chart that shows that that percentage is different than the percentage of men in movies that have failed or ensemble movies that have failed? What about the ticket prices of the movies over the years, the change of that? Are we going to go all the way back to the 90s? Or are we just doing a cherry-picked block of time that you've selected with women as lead characters in movies, which, by the way, the big one started very recently, which is why you can't go back much further than that, because there's not a lot of traction for that. And that's why it's so disingenuous. You're like, oh, women started being the lead of superhero movies very, very recently, and we expect them to be a hit right out of the gate, even though men have been the lead of superhero movies for decades, and a lot of them have failed, but they were allowed to fail in order to get to the ones that are huge blockbusters in the box office, because the barrier of entry for women is much higher than men, and they keep admitting this. They keep proving this every time they make these videos.
And out of those 3, Wonder Woman and Captain Marvel both came out before the decline of superhero movies in general, and both of those crashed out with disastrous sequels that brought in 80% less than their predecessors.
And that happened with some of the male-led films too. Because you said it was superhero fatigue. That was your argument before this. So if superhero fatigue is real, which I disagree, I don't think it's actually a real thing, but this is your argument, so we're going to stay in your argument. Your argument is that superhero fatigue is a real thing. Therefore, it can't be just women in movies. The factor would be superhero fatigue, not women in films, because you could show correlating numbers of male movies in that same time period that underperformed as well. So it would be superhero fatigue, not women as lead characters. This is your argument, not mine, and it's inconsistent here.
The only film to buck the trend here is Wakanda Forever, which ported a female character in to replace the male lead of the previous film after the actor passed away in real life. It's kinda hard to gauge the merits of this film on its own, because in some ways it was coasting on the massive success of the first Black Panther.
Do you think that people thought Chadwick Boseman was coming back then? Is that what you're suggesting? That people didn't know that he wasn't going to be in the movie? Why would the success of Black Panther 2 have anything to do with Chadwick Boseman? Why? Everybody knew going into this movie that he wasn't in the film. Everybody going into this movie knew that there was going to be a change of mantles for Black Panther. This is you just ignoring that one of the movies in this block of time with a woman in the lead role performed well. And you're hand waving it. The same thing you did with Captain Marvel. Oh, it's just where it was released on the schedule. That I've said this before. When it comes to women, when they do something successful that destroys the narrative that these guys have created, they have to come up with some magical reason why. Oh, it is because of this reason. It's not because the movie is good, or the women were good in the role, or the writing was good, or the acting was good, or anything. It's never those things. It's always there was some other male component that made the woman's film do well. So it's taking that success of a woman in a lead role and going, it's some other factor. But when a movie fails with the woman as the lead, it's the woman that's the problem. You see how dumb this is? Oh, Black Widow obviously failed because a movie about Black Widow and this character that everybody loved in the lead role, it failed because of her specifically. But when Captain Marvel does well, it's because it was riding on the success of all the men in the films around it and where it was positioned between these two male-led films. When Black Panther Wakanda Forever does well, it's because of Chadwick Boseman and the success of the other movie. But then when something like the Marvels fails, it's because it's women. It's like it's not even a consistent argument. There's no consistency to this at all.
Movie, although I would point out that it made 500 million less at the box office. All of this is a long-winded way of saying that female-led superhero movies have a pretty spotty success rate, especially in recent years. Then there's name recognition.
It can only be in recent years because we've only been having superhero-led films since like 2019. I say you count Wonder Woman, 2017. But still, that's a decade. That's one decade. So, how many male superhero movies and properties have we had since women started starring in superhero movies? And y'all are still crying about it? It's really sad.
To think about. See, Superman himself is about as ubiquitous as any fictional character can possibly be. You could pick almost any human being on the face of the earth, from a goat herder in Peru to an izakaya owner in Japan. Show them a picture of Superman and they'll probably know exactly who he is.
Who cares? Who gives a fuck? You can do the same thing with Supergirl. You can do the same thing. Like, who gives a fuck? Wonder Woman, same thing. And actually, you should probably use Spider-Man. Spider-Man is the most recognizable superhero in the world. By far. Which, by the way, we are almost 3.5 minutes into this video, and you've yet to explain how you're going to fix Supergirl. All you've done is tried to express that women in movies fail more often than men. So I don't really know how any of that is useful criticism on fixing Supergirl. Like, I don't know how that, what is the studio going to do with that? Oh, pack it up, guys. Pack it up. We got a woman. We got boobs on screen. It's going to fail. Take a walk. Clock out for the day. Throw the script in the dumpster.
He's had endless comics, movies, TV shows, cartoons, and merchandise made about him for almost 100 years now. He may be one of the single most marketable characters ever created. Well,
again, you're using Superman opposed to Batman and Spider-Man, who are far more monetarily successful in terms of characters around the world. They're the top two, and they're more easily modified. Superman is a little bit tougher to modify because most people complain that he's not exactly right, and that's because he's a tough. I would argue Superman. I used to think Superman's the easiest character to translate from comics to live action. I am absolutely wrong about that. I will take the L on that. I think Superman is so tough because he does seem so easy to modify, to like take and adapt from comics to live action. I think he's tough. I think a show like Superman and Lois did a great job of adapting Superman and Lois Lane in a different way. Probably my favorite adaptation of Superman is that version, simply because it was so reminiscent to me of like what I would want from Superman in the comics and live action. So that to me was successful, but that's subjective. Everybody's gonna have different opinions. But Superman is tough to adapt. He's a tough character to market and make successful. Superman movies historically, at least in modern times, have not blown the doors off the theaters. None of them have really done that. But Spider-Man and Batman have. You could put out a average Batman movie and it would probably still outperform Superman. I believe that. I haven't ran the numbers here, but I believe that an average Batman movie would probably outperform a really good Superman movie.
From this fucking thing at least. Supergirl though? Nah, not so much. Especially in the world of film and TV, which is what we're talking about here. Her first and so far only big screen outing was the disastrous 90...
No, she was in the Flash movie. Why do they keep forgetting that she was in the Flash movie? Is this some sort of like... Is this like a racist thing? I'm not sure what it is. She was in the Flash movie. Like, she wasn't the biggest part of the movie, but she was a major element of the film. She had a role that served a purpose in the movie. So, and she was in the marketing and stuff. So they keep going back to this one and going, this is her only film. Like, it's not. She was in another movie. What are we doing?
1984 movie. God bless Helen Slater though, she tried her little heart out with that one. And while the TV show from a few years ago had some fans on the CW, it was hardly a global success. One failed movie from 40 years ago and a mildly successful TV show don't exactly launch a character into the public consciousness. Now,
so then it should be easy to make a movie that doesn't have any sort of like expectations, right? Should be super easy. You got a character, sort of brand new, according to Drinker. Sort of brand new. Nobody recognizes a woman wearing the literal Superman suit. No one recognizes that. According to him, his words, not mine, nobody would recognize her. So therefore, the movie is coming out with a very clean slate, and they can do anything they want with the character. So if people are not tied to some sort of comic book version of Supergirl that they love, then they can literally do anything they want with the movie. And they should be okay. It should be good to go because the expectations are so low. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that the reason why Critical Drinker's not talking about any comic book versions of Supergirl is because he doesn't care. He never read Supergirl. He doesn't know anything about the character. If you were to ask him, hey, what's your favorite Supergirl story from the comics? He's not going to have an answer for you. He might remember the one cover where Superman is holding her in his arms. He might remember that, but that's it. He's not going to be able to mention anything else with Supergirl because he doesn't care about Supergirl. He doesn't care about any of the stories she's ever been in. He doesn't even remember that she was in the Flash movie. Again, I don't know if it's racist or just idiocy. I'm not sure. By the way, Bumpkin says it was hardly a success. It ran for 6 seasons. And the reality is the show would have gotten another season, but Melissa didn't want to continue. The star of Supergirl walked away from the role. She didn't want to do it anymore. So she's the one that ended the show. The show didn't get canceled because nobody liked it. It ended because the lead star didn't want to do it anymore. So, again, this video is garbage. It is so fucking bad.
All of this is relevant because Superman, based around a far more popular and well-known character, in the movie that was supposed to relaunch an entirely new universe of DC on film, barely scraped its way to $600 million last.
I'm not going to get into this back and forth about the numbers with Superman. It's so dumb. It's so dumb. It's one of those arguments where they're going to keep saying it and people are going to keep believing them. They're going to ignore all the ancillary money that it made. They're going to ignore VOD. They're going to ignore literally the executives from the studio saying we were happy with the money it made and still say it was a complete failure. This is just the narrative. It's no longer based in reality. They've just created a fake reality where that is their statement. The movie failed and we're just going to keep saying it. We're just going to keep talking about it. Even though the list of failures they showed with like the movies with women in it, the ones with like the $200 million box offices, they're like, these are failures. But then a movie can almost make $700-800 million. They're like, that's a failure. It doesn't even make sense. It just doesn't make sense. On top of that, Supergirl is a cheaper movie than Superman. We know that the budget was lower. They said the estimated budget for Supergirl is much lower than Superman. So already it's going in on a better foot because it's got a lower budget.
That is not a good result no matter how people try to spin it, and realistically, it's probably as good as it's going to get for DC now. I think it's safe to say that Supergirl is going to make less than that did. It's just a question of how much.
Oh no, the character that you've already established isn't as popular as Superman is probably going to make less than Superman. Wow, what kind of like math did you have to do to pull that one out of your ass? What? Like you've already established that you think the character is completely unrecognizable to the general public, which I disagree with wholeheartedly. I think anybody with 2 brain cells can figure out if you see a girl in the Superman suit. Say for example, you have no point of reference on Supergirl. You see a girl in the Superman suit, you're like, oh, that's a Supergirl. That's a Superwoman. Like you're gonna get it. You're gonna figure it out.
Reality is that regardless of its creative merits, and that's debatable right now, a movie like Supergirl is weak. It's a lame duck. The only way it can succeed is by using what I call the Captain Marvel doctrine. Right?
Okay, so here we go. I wonder if you were going to get into Captain Marvel. I want to put this out there. If the movie ends up being really successful, they will make excuses for it. At this point now, they have locked in. The narrative is the movie is going to fail. So if the movie fails, they're not going to be shocked about it because they've already locked into that narrative. If the movie is successful, okay, you're going to hear Excuse City. They will dispute the box office, the legitimacy of the box office. Like if it doesn't come in at $1 billion, they're just going to say it's not successful because it costs so much to make. Even though we know that's not going to be true. That's what they're going to say. They're going to run with that. Or they will place the success on something else. Jason Momoa was the best thing in the movie, and that's why it did well, or something like that. They will come up with another reason why they believe the movie is successful. I want to hear what this Captain Marvel doctrine is. I would make, before we even listen to this, let me tell you guys my stance on Captain Marvel. I've said this before, but I think it's a good time to like restate my thoughts on Captain Marvel. People in the movie industry, when a movie is set to be released in the theaters, every single decision that is made prior to that movie coming out is part of the creative process of the movie. Everything from like when you're going to release it, what movies it's going to come out around, where it's going to be in the lineup, what is the maximum place for that film to go for us to make the most amount of money. Every movie, especially in a franchise like Marvel, is done with that level of scrutiny. It's part of the process of making a film. So when Captain Marvel got positioned where it was, that was them making a decision. This is where this movie needs to go. We want the movie to be able to make the most money it can, so we're going to put it in the right place between big films so we can set this movie up for the most success it can possibly have. And guess what? They made the right decision. The movie made a ton of money. People went back for repeat viewings. And you could argue whether or not you actually personally like the movie, but it's irrelevant when the vast majority of information we have shows that the movie was liked most favorably by the general audience. Like the general public liked the movie. The money was spent and people talk positively about the movie, even if it's not their favorite film. And you can love it, you can hate it. Subjectively, I don't really care. I don't argue whether or not somebody hates a movie or not. You can hate it if you want to hate it. The point is that all of those things factor into the success of that movie. But if it were a movie with a man in it, like say Ant-Man and the Wasp, they're going to ignore whether or not that movie performs above expectations. They're going to ignore that. They're going to go, oh, well, that's a different story. And there's another factor. Now the goalpost moves and they'll say, oh, it's because Captain Marvel was super important to Endgame and Infinity War. And that's the reason why it succeeded. Even though we know that Ant-Man was also super important to what happens during in Infinity War and Endgame. We know that already, right? But they will change the goalposts. Now it's not that the movie came out between two successful movies. Now it's because the character and the movie was important to the storyline. And then the goalposts will change again. The more you keep bringing these logical things to them, the more they keep pushing that goalpost ahead. So I'm curious what his Captain Marvel doctrine is, because this is going to be some grade A bullshit, I'm pretty sure.
Right now, a movie like Supergirl is weak. It's a lame duck. The only way it can succeed is by using what I call the Captain Marvel doctrine. Riding the momentum of a strong and successful franchise and convincing audiences they just have to see this film if they want.
That's the same thing every other male-led movie does when it comes out in a franchise. All of them are riding on the success of the franchise. That's the way the industry works. So this point doesn't mean anything. It literally means nothing. It has no value whatsoever.
Want to understand the big overarching story. Now, that worked great for Marvel back in 2019, but sadly, it's not 2019 anymore, and this ain't Marvel. It would have made infinitely more.
So your argument is that the Captain... Oh my God. We might have to stop here. We might have to stop. I think I have reached almost my breaking point with this video. So the Captain Marvel doctrine is that you put a movie out that rides on the success of the existing IP, the existing franchise. That's the Captain Marvel doctrine. I think that's kind of that's the way the industry works. That's how all of this. Okay, I can't watch the rest of this video. If that's all you got, I don't even want to hear what you have to say anymore about Supergirl, to be honest. Like, Captain Marvel was successful only because it's in a successful franchise. Ignoring that there were movies with men in that same franchise that made less money than Captain Marvel. Ignoring that there was a movie released during the time period that Captain Marvel came out between those two movies that made less money than Captain Marvel. We're just going to ignore all that. But that's the magic formula.